All right, let's start with the big story that we're tracking on WION at this hour, where thousands of protesters have braved the rains to hit the streets of Hong Kong in defiance of the government's new face mask ban. This as pro-democracy lawmakers are challenging the ban in the court. The ban, which has been invoked under a colonial-era emergency law, has backfired as it has prompted more people to take to the streets. Despite the heavy police presence at the protest sites, the ban has made all types of facial covering, including face paint, illegal. And also in another part of the city, demonstrators formed a human chain as the protests have continued to escalate, especially after an off-duty police officer had shot at the protesters. The police have said that the officer had actually fired in self-defense. Meanwhile, pan-democracy lawmakers have approached the court to block the ban. Earlier, a legislator had accused the China-backed Hong Kong chief executive of using the ban as a weapon of mass oppression of the protests. All right, now for more on this, we are joined in by WION's Grace Lee, who's joining us live from Hong Kong. Grace, I know it is very noisy where you are, but if you can hear me, give us a sense of how the people are responding to this ban on face masks by the Hong Kong administration.
Well, I mean, take a look behind me. This is how Hong Kong has responded to that face mask ban. There are protesters as far as the eye can see, all with umbrellas and, of course, with face masks. Now, there's no official count just yet on how many people are out here, but certainly it's been 2 hours since this march has began here near Causeway Bay in the Wan Chai area, and there is no end in sight for this long line of protesters. Now, when I've spoken to a couple of the protesters here wearing masks, and I've asked them if they're afraid of going to jail potentially for a year or facing thousands of dollars in fines because of this new ban, and they say, you know, they're not afraid of it. And, of course, this being an illegal march, they could already face a couple of charges from that alone. So this is not deterring protesters at all from coming out. And behind me, we're actually seeing a couple of tense moments here as protesters have been stopping and marching and stopping and turning back occasionally as the demonstrators who are up ahead warn protesters behind them of any police presence up ahead. And we're already hearing that there have been a couple of clashes between protesters and police in the Admiralty area, which is just a neighborhood away from here. So things are definitely tense here. Protesters are on edge. And, of course, we haven't seen any clashes here just yet. It's been mostly a very peaceful protest, but I have seen a lot of protesters in full gear and, of course, a very large police presence throughout Hong Kong today. So, you know, There may be clashes in the evening, and we're certainly bracing for that.
Absolutely, indeed. And also, you know, one of the things that will be in focus is the leadership of Carrie Lam while she has handled these protests. Now, the protesters actually want Carrie Lam to go, but instead of that, what we are seeing is this hardening of stance from the chief executive of Hong Kong, where she's now invoked these emergency laws. So what are the protesters now saying about Carrie Lam continuing as the chief executive of Hong Kong?
There is a lot of anger here towards Hong Kong's leader, Carrie Lam, especially because of this new face mask ban and the fact that she invoked emergency powers in order to implement that ban. Now, that emergency law that hasn't been used here in over 50 years is an old colonial law, and it allows her some sweeping powers over Hong Kong city, this city, and Hong Kong's people. It'll allow her to potentially censor media or control Hong Kong's transportation or even issue search warrants, whatever she sees fit for Hong Kong people's safety. She'll be able to pass through as law at this moment because of that emergency law. And so that is certainly frightening for Hong Kong's demonstrators here. They say that, you know, it definitely signals that they're up against a big machine when it comes to fighting their government. And they're worried about that face mask ban potentially being the first of many laws to be passed under Carrie Lam's leadership at the moment.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Grace, for joining us and getting us all those updates from Hong Kong. The time is roughly about 4:40 right now in the city, and we'll, of course, come back to you as more updates, in fact, emerge. So remember, this is, in fact, a worsening of the protests in the aftermath of this announcement by the administration in Hong Kong that all face masks, including face paint, have now been banned. It is the invoking of an emergency law that's not been invoked in the last 50 years that's in fact riled the protesters very much. They're asking for greater autonomy, and instead what they have got is a very draconian sort of a law which has now oppressed them and in many ways taken away a lot of their already existing rights.